Shabbat Shalom. There is a story about a Rabbi who in his early days didn't have a very big Hasidic court. This is a few hundred years ago. And so he would often help out in his home to do all the different areas that needed to be done. And his followers were always amazed that when he had to sew, which happened, that whatever his stitches always looked perfect and had a special beauty to them, even though he'd barely done it, and they're always as good as those who've been doing it for many decades. So tomorrow we read in the Torah about a unique element of the tabernacle. Really, almost the whole parsha is about the clothes of the high priest. And God says that only those who are wise of heart could make the clothes of the high priest and of the other priests. They had to be done by people who had the skills as artisans and in art, but they also had to be wise of heart. So what does it mean to be wise of heart? So there's a rabbi in Ukraine from the 19th century, the Malbim, and he says, well, to be wise of heart is something very special. You can be very wise, and he says there are people out there who are wise, who have the ability to draw on some of the understanding of what the universe is about and life, and to navigate life with that special understanding we call wisdom. But they're really still a war within themselves, as most human beings are, with trying to overcome their own limitations and negativity and all the things that we go through. But he says someone who is wise in heart is another level. And that's someone whose every chamber of their heart, this is the words he uses, every chamber of their heart is filled with wisdom. That there's no more room for real bad intentions and real bad impulses. They're still, of course, they're a human being, but they've basically won that battle. But because they had this special wholeness, it meant that when they created these clothes of the high priest and of the other priests 3,500 years ago, that the stitches that they made, everything about it had a special beauty to it, a beauty that was both reflective of their skill, but also of their spirit, of their harmony that they had achieved. And that, why is it only that you had only the wise of heart could make these clothes? Because the clothes had this very unique details, and we read all about this in the Torah. It wasn't only to look beautiful for the people who were looking at them, but also for themselves, the priests, that they should know that they had to live a certain way. That just as their outer clothes were beautiful, their inner clothes had to be beautiful too. And that somehow, when they were being made by these special artisans who were also wise of heart, it would imbue the clothes with that spirit of what they were trying to aim for, striving for wholeness, striving for being messengers of peace and all of that. And so there's actually a whole passage in the Talmud that says, well, actually every item of clothes, and there's this endless detail in the Torah of all these different clothes and how they looked. But the different parts of the clothes reminded them of work they had to do on themselves that would then help them do this for the children of Israel. So the tunic reminded them not to spill blood, both physically and metaphorically. The trousers reminded them of how to act in all of their romantic relationships. The mitre, which is the hat, was to help them not to be arrogant. The belt atoned for bad thoughts in their heart. The breastplate of the high priest helped them with improper judgments in their own minds. The ephod, which was probably a sort of robe, reminded them to only worship God, not to put other idols up in their lives. And finally, the robe that they wore was about reminding themselves how to use correct speech. And the front plate, which was above the turban, and it said God's name on it, was to remind them not to be haughty. And so there's something beautiful about this idea of these clothes that were a combination of inner and of outer. And that maybe the teaching of all of this, and I've been thinking about, well, what is all this saying? And maybe it's saying is that everything in life has an inner aspect and an outer aspect. And one can have someone who has incredible skill just in art, but without that spirit, the art isn't as alive. On the other hand, you can have the other side. You can have all that spirit, but if you don't have also some of the skill in the art, then it's also, but when you have both of those, then you can really create something that's beautiful and that can uplift others, that can bring peace and beauty and a life of growth. Shabbat Shalom.